Peoples tied Royal Guard to pole for fun, but 10 minutes later, unthinkable happened. Amazing viewers, get ready for a wild ride through a story that'll make your jaw drop. Today, we're diving into a tale that's part funny, part scary, and 100% unbelievable. But before we start, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It only takes a second, and it means the world to us. Also, let us know in the comments which country you're watching from. We love hearing from our global family. A beautiful sunny day outside a famous royal palace. The sky is as blue as a robin's egg, and fluffy white clouds drift lazily overhead. Tourists from all over the world are snapping photos and enjoying the sights. Children are pointing excitedly at the grand buildings, and adults are reading from guidebooks, soaking in the history. And there, standing tall and proud, is one of those famous royal guards. You know the ones. They wear those big fluffy hats and never smile or move. This guard, let's call him George, has been standing at his post for hours. His shiny boots are planted firmly on the ground, and his eyes are focused straight ahead. Little did George know, his day was about to get very, very interesting. Now enter our main characters. A group of tourists who thought they had the funniest idea ever. These folks weren't your average sightseers. Oh no! They had mischief on their minds. There were 5 of them, 2 guys and 3 girls, all in their early 20s. They were wearing bright clothes and had big smiles on their faces. As they approached the guard, they started whispering and giggling. One of them, a tall guy with spiky hair, seemed to be the leader. He was gesturing excitedly, and the others were nodding along. Can you guess what they were planning? Hold on to your hats, because it's pretty wild. So, what did these silly tourists do? Believe it or not, they actually tied the royal guard to a pole. Yes, you heard that right. They somehow managed to sneak up and tie this poor guard who couldn't move or say anything. Now, that's not just naughty. It's actually against the law. Here's how it went down. The group casually walked up to George, pretending to pose for a photo. Then, quick as a flash, they whipped out some rope and started wrapping it around him and the pole he was standing next to. Poor George couldn't do anything but stand there, probably wishing he had chosen a different career. Imagine being that guard. There he was, tied to a pole, unable to move or call for help. He probably felt pretty silly and maybe a little scared too. All he could do was stand there, hoping someone would notice and come to his rescue. Talk about a tough day at work. George's mind must have been racing. What would his boss say? Would he get in trouble? And most importantly, how long would he have to stand there before someone helped him? He couldn't even reach for his phone to call for backup. All he could do was stand there, as still as a statue, which, ironically, was exactly what he was supposed to be doing anyway. For a whole 10 minutes, our guard friend was stuck there. That might not sound like a long time, but when you're tied to a pole, every second feels like an hour. The tourists who did this probably thought it was hilarious, but let's be real. It wasn't very kind or smart during those 10 minutes. Life around George went on as usual. Tourists walked by, taking photos of the palace, completely unaware of his predicament. A few people gave him odd looks, probably wondering why there was rope around him, but nobody said anything. Maybe they thought it was some new royal guard fashion trend. Just when things were looking pretty gloomy for our tied-up guard, guess who showed up? A whole squad of royal guards. Can you imagine the scene? A bunch of serious-looking guards marching up to rescue their friend. It must have been quite a sight. There were 6 of them, all dressed in their fancy uniforms with those big fluffy hats. They marched in perfect unison, their shoes clicking on the pavement. As they got closer and saw what had happened to George, their eyes went wide with surprise. I bet they never expected to see one of their own tied up like a Christmas present. The guard squad quickly got to work untying their buddy. They probably had to be careful not to mess up their fancy uniforms while they were at it. I bet our tied-up guard was super happy to see them. He was probably thinking, finally, I can scratch my nose. As they worked on the knots, a crowd started to gather. People were pointing and whispering, wondering what was going on. Some even took out their phones to record the whole thing. I guess it's not every day you see a royal guard being rescued from a pole. Now, here's where it gets exciting. Once they freed their friend, the guards weren't about to let those naughty tourists get away. Nope, they started looking for them right away. It was like a real-life game of hide and seek, but with much bigger consequences. The guards split up, each taking a different direction. They scanned the crowds, looking for the troublemakers. Meanwhile, George, now free from his ropes, joined in the search. He was probably extra motivated to find the pranksters. This whole crazy situation teaches us something important. It's always good to have fun, but not at someone else's expense. Those guards are doing an important job, and we should respect that. Plus, tying someone up is never okay. Even if you think it's just a joke, that it's easy to forget that the guards are real people with feelings. They might look like statues, but they're actually working hard to protect the palace and the people in it. This incident reminds us to be kind and considerate to everyone, even if their job is to stand still and look serious. After all that excitement, I bet that guard got to take a nice long break. Maybe he even got an extra cup of tea for his troubles. He probably had quite a story to tell his family when he got home that night. Imagine George sitting in the guard break room, sipping a steaming cup of tea, surrounded by his colleagues. They're all patting him on the back, telling him he handled the situation well. And George, he's probably just happy to be able to move his arms again. I wonder if the palace had to make some new rules after this happened. Maybe they put up signs saying, "Please don't tie up the guards." Or perhaps they gave the guards special training on how to avoid being tied to poles. It's funny to think about, isn't it? They might have even added a new section to the tourist guidebook, things not to do at the palace, with "Don't tie up the guards" right at the top of the list. It would be pretty amusing to see that printed in official palace literature. This story is so wild, it's sure to be told for years to come. Imagine being a new guard and hearing about the time your colleague got tied to a pole. It would certainly make you extra careful during your shifts. I can just picture the senior guards telling the story to the rookies during training. And remember, always be on the lookout for tourists with rope. The new guards would probably laugh, thinking it was just a joke, until they realized it actually happened. Let's think about those tourists for a second. What made them come up with such a crazy idea? Maybe they thought the guard was just a statue or that he would find it funny. Whatever their reason, I bet they learned a big lesson that day about respecting others and following rules. Perhaps they were just trying to get a funny video for social media. Or maybe they had a bet going about whether they could make the guard move. Whatever it was, I'm sure they regretted it when they saw the whole squad of guards looking for them. One cool thing about this story is how it shows the importance of teamwork. When one guard was in trouble, a whole team came to help. It's a nice reminder that we should always look out for our friends and coworkers. It's like the old saying goes, "United we stand, divided we fall." In this case, it was more like, "United we stand, divided we get tied to poles." The guards showed that when you work together, you can overcome any challenge, even unexpected ones involving rope and mischievous tourists. You know, usually tourists are the ones taking pictures of the guards. But on this day, I bet there were plenty of people taking pictures of the tourists getting into trouble. It just goes to show that sometimes the most interesting attractions are the ones you don't expect. Imagine all the selfies and videos that must have been taken that day. People probably posted them online with captions like, "You won't believe what I saw at the palace today." It's not the kind of souvenir most people expect to take home from their vacation. This story is a good reminder for all of us to stay alert and aware of our surroundings. Whether you're a royal guard or just someone walking down the street, you never know when something unexpected might happen. For the guards, it might mean being more watchful of tourists getting too close. For the rest of us, it's a reminder to keep our eyes open and be ready for anything. You never know when you might need to help someone out of a tricky situation. I wonder what the royal family thought when they heard about this. Do you think they laughed it off, or were they not amused? It's fun to imagine the Queen sipping her tea and shaking her head at the news. Maybe the younger royals found it funny and teased the guards about it. Or perhaps they were concerned and asked for extra security measures. Either way, I'm sure it was the talk of the palace for quite a while. After an adventure like that, I bet that guard got a new nickname from his friends. Maybe they started calling him Pole Star or the Unmovable One. Sometimes, embarrassing moments can turn into funny stories we laugh about later. Imagine George walking into work the next day, and all his fellow guards start humming the theme from Tied to the Whipping Post. He'd probably roll his eyes, but deep down, he might enjoy being the center of attention for once. The story of the day, a royal guard got tied to a pole and needed a whole squad to rescue him. It's a tale of mischief, teamwork, and the importance of respecting others. I hope you enjoyed this wild ride as much as I enjoyed telling it. Remember, always be kind, follow the rules, and maybe think twice before you try to prank someone, especially if they're wearing a big fluffy hat and guarding a palace. Thanks for joining me for this crazy story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Until next time, keep your eyes open for more unbelievable tales from around the world. And remember, the next time you see a royal guard, give them a smile, but please leave your rope at home.